Hello, Phoenix Generation Conference. My name is Shira Hoffer, and I'm so excited to be with you today. I am a senior at Harvard studying social studies and religion, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Institute for Multipartisan Education, a nonprofit which works to promote curious and constructive engagement across lines of difference in educational spaces. And today, I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about my story as a student social impact entrepreneur, why curious disagreement is so important, and how we can change the way that we interact with each other for the better. So a little bit about my background. I've really always been someone for whom connection across differences has been important. I'm Jewish, but interfaith has always been really exciting for me. I did a few interfaith programs as a kid, like Kids for Peace. I went on a trip to Israel and the West Bank, which involved Christian, Muslim, and Jewish students, and really have grown a lot through my ability to interact with people with whom I have fundamental differences, but that I can connect with on different wavelengths. And so I went to a Jewish high school. It was a pluralistic high school, which meant we were all Jewish, but we came from different Jewish practices. And the school really focused on community building with in mind those differences. So thinking about how can we do something together, even though we think about it very differently. And I loved that approach. It helped me grow religiously and spiritually, as well as in my ability to interact with people with differences. And coming into college, I really thought, college is going to be like high school, but on steroids. Like, we're all going to have so many differences. We're going to interact so well with each other. Everything's going to be like perfect. Everyone's going to be so good at it. And there are some people who are really great at it. And there are some people who really haven't had those types of experiences that I have before. And so that type of engagement across differences, I realized, can be really, really challenging. And I kind of had a turning point moment my freshman year around my interest in engagement across differences, speech on campus, controversy, etc., where I was in a classroom and we were discussing how to dismantle the university system. This was my freshman fall. I had just gotten to the university and I was like, why are we dismantling this system? And so I raised my hand and I said, I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify, why we're doing this. And everybody stared at me like I was a dinosaur. And I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. I'll just be quiet. And so I just waited until the end of class. And after class, I went up to the professor and I said, just curious why everybody looked at me funny when I asked that question. And she said, we don't ask questions like that in this classroom because we want the classroom to be a safe space for people who experience things like racism and homophobia outside of class. And I remember I was just confused because I was like, of course, I want people who have experienced racism and homophobia to feel comfortable. And I don't really understand why that question wasn't okay. And so that kind of sent me spiraling on this path towards studying social studies and religion, trying to understand better what is controversial and why, how do people engage with controversy productively, what is the relationship between the importance of feeling uncomfortable, especially in academic settings, with feeling supported and that you're being treated with dignity. And so this kind of experience is, I guess if you ask me what was the turning point for me, it was this conversation in class. And so I ended up training as a small claims court mediator through the Harvard Law School program on mediation. I was a fellow in the Intercollegiate Civil Disagreement program through the Safra Center for Ethics at Harvard College, worked as an intern at the Carter Center in Atlanta in their conflict resolution program, and kind of steeped myself in as many opportunities as I could to really engage across differences, something that I've loved doing since I was a kid, and felt like I was building a portfolio of skills and experiences in this realm. And then October 7th happened. Hamas entered Israel, toured the Nova Festival, slaughtered people during the dancing, killed people in their homes, kidnapped people back into Gaza. And during that time, I mentioned I'm Jewish. I was in the synagogue and I was disconnected from media altogether. I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't reading the news. That was my way of practicing the holiday that we were celebrating that weekend. So I had this really bizarre experience of learning about the news over the course of 8 to 12 hours that day around people who also didn't really know what was happening. So there was a lot of confusion and stress and fear and anger. And people started saying things about Palestinians, about the conflict, that I actually thought were really problematic. I also was scared. I was angry. I felt like this was an unacceptable thing to happen to the Jewish people. And I felt like we still can't say those terrible things about this group of people. We still can't be stereotyping, drawing conclusions, etc. And then outside of Hillel, outside of the Jewish community, people very quickly started saying things like it was all Israel's fault. Israel planned the attack. They attacked their own citizens. And so I felt very caught in the middle. I was like, okay, I have all these dialogue skills. These people are saying things that I don't think they should be saying. These people are saying things I don't think they should be saying. But nobody's talking to each other. What I really wanted was us all to kind of sit down and talk to each other about our fears, our concerns, what we thought was going to happen next. And so, long story short, I ended up starting this hotline called the Hotline for Israel Palestine, which is a texting hotline with volunteers of different backgrounds who respond to text messages from people like you. You can use the hotline if you want to ask questions about the conflict and receive responses that share a range of perspectives. So any question that you ask, we won't say, this is the right answer. We'll say, here are 3 perspectives and here are sources that you can look at to read more. And we got hundreds of text messages over the past couple of years. We have a great group of volunteers who are working on this, and the project has been really successful, but I realized that it's missing one thing. The hotline is great for people who think that they have questions and they don't know where to ask them. But I realized that the people that I'm more concerned about are the people who don't think that they have questions at all, who feel kind of certain that their side is correct, that engaging with the other side would be wrong, that they have nothing to learn from people who disagree with them. Those are the people that I think are creating the biggest obstacle to things like academic freedom and also to community building and democracy as a whole. And so I got a text from a teacher actually one day on the hotline that catalyzed the growth of the Institute for Multipartisan Education, which is focused more broadly on the skills of curious disagreement, kind of inspired by the mission of the hotline to provide a range of perspectives and working to teach people both the skills and the disposition to be able to engage curiously with perspectives that they disagree with. So we work both in middle and high school and also on college campuses, piloting this year a program called the Multipartisan Leaders Training Initiative with a couple of colleges looking to expand across the country. So I've been talking about curious disagreement. In fact, our motto for the Institute for Multipartisan Education is disagree curiously. But what does that actually mean? And really, what am I talking about? So first of all, I'm talking about something really hard. I made it sound like really fun and easy. Actually, it's really hard. So if you're thinking about some of the things that I've said and scratching your head or thinking, I could never do that, totally hear you. The brain actually works. The neuroscience research suggests that the brain is designed to make this type of thing hard on purpose. There are kind of neurological, cognitive, social, and moral factors that make the type of uncomfortable engagement that we're talking about here difficult. So I'll give you an example. If you had a chair and you saw a chair and you were like, I'm tired, I'm going to sit down, you would probably just sit down in that chair. You wouldn't like look at the legs and like make sure it was structurally sound. You would just sit down. That's because your brain has something called heuristics, which is that you look at something and it fits automatically into a category that exists in your brain. This makes life really easy when you're doing things like sitting in a chair, crossing the street, all things that you can kind of have these automatic processes and categorize things in a way that makes sense. Now think about if you meet somebody. The same thing happens in your brain. Your brain automatically puts them in a box that already exists. That's obviously an evolutionarily beneficial thing that happens in your brain, but it gets in the way of this type of disagreement because people don't fit in these boxes that our brain puts them in. So we need to kind of push ourselves to go against a subconscious thing that's happening in our brains. Really, really difficult. Another thing that makes it difficult is this desire for belonging that we all have. Everybody wants to feel like they belong, like they have a community, like they're comfortable. And what I'm talking about is something that will make you feel fundamentally uncomfortable at certain times. But I think that this pushing through the discomfort helps us ultimately kind of belong better as a society. And so if you come to my workshop later this afternoon, you'll kind of learn a little bit more about these challenges as well as a few tips for how to overcome them. The number one compliment I get is, but you're only a student. How are you doing all these things? People really want to hear from students. So you have that kind of asset. If you're wondering, like, what do I bring to this that's different from everything else? First of all, I'm sure a lot of things. But the most basic thing is that you're a student and that your voice matters, even though you're younger, even though people may say, yo, you don't have the experience. No, there's something unique about the student voice. Use that voice. Be as authentic as you can. You know, you don't want to take somebody else's idea, take somebody else's story. You want to use yours, understand it as best you can for yourself, and then share it in a way that feels compelling to you. That's the first step toward making change.